The truth is that most of you are Epsteins, just minus the money. That's a fact. It's like when I was talking about Diddy last time, when the Diddy case was going on. This is the lifestyle and this is the behavior that your culture applauds and it endorses and it teaches you to aspire to. I mean, most people are not going to go through the Epstein files. Think about this. They're not going through the Epstein files to try to investigate, the possible architecture of private sector influence that he supposedly operated. They're not looking for that. What are they looking for? They're looking for salacious details about girls and about sex and about sadism and whatnot. Sex parties. That's what you're doing. Scouring through, trying to find the most lurid, the most lecherous, the most depraved information that you can, because you have an appetite for that. The truth is, you're not outraged, you're stimulated. Your whole culture is obsessed with this kind of thing. And your rich people, like I say, they're no different from you. They just have money. They just have the money and they have the power to live out what is actually, in reality, your collective fantasy in the West. And when one or two women who are victimized, one or two women who are victimized from the multitude of women who were involved, when victims come forward, because the fantasy actually has consequences on real people. When you actually live it out in real life, the fantasy has victims. So when the victims come forward, then you express shock and you express outrage, which, if truth be told, is driven more by envy than by anything like a genuine conscience. And now you get to be the self-righteous mob, with your torches and pitchforks, storming the palace of the debauched aristocracy, whose lives and whose lifestyles you wish you had, but you don't have. And that's what makes you angry. I mean, be serious. How many music videos, think about this, how many music videos have you seen that are not set in a mansion or by a pool or on an island where you have some male performer who's absolutely submerged in an ocean of scantily clad women who are framed in that video as party favors? No, you're hypocrites. You're hypocrites. You approve of that fantasy, you promote that fantasy, and you know perfectly well that the rich can and do live out this fantasy in real life. And it's all completely approved of, and it's all completely encouraged and aspired to in popular culture, because your popular culture is continuously in puberty. I said your popular culture is a teenage boy. No, Epstein came from your culture. Clinton came from your culture. Musk, Gates, Summers, whoever else. Yes, everybody knew what Epstein was doing. No question about it. Of course they knew what he was doing. They were doing it too. And they still are. None of these people needed Jeffrey Epstein to provide this kind of thing for them. He was just one of their own, doing what they all do and living out your collective Western degenerate fantasy. That's a fact. I've talked about this before. We all know you're like this. Everyone in the world knows that you're like this. You can act shocked, you can act disgusted as much as you want, but no one believes you. No one believes you who knows anything at all about your culture, who knows anything at all about your history, and who knows anything at all from their direct experience of your character. You were like this in every country. You were like this in every country that you invaded and that you colonized. You were like this on your plantations. Yes, you lived out your fantasy, your Epsteinian fantasy with African women on your plantations. I said the founding fathers of your country are the original Epstein list. So what are you talking about? You lived out your fantasy in Congo. You lived out your fantasy in Kenya, in Namibia, in Algeria, in the Philippines, in Korea, all across Indochina. You lived out that fantasy in Haiti, in Iraq, in Afghanistan. Now, you've been Epstein all around the world, and you're Epstein right now. In fact, your whole population, you don't want to hear it, but it's true, your whole population is either an Epstein, a pre-Epstein, or a wannabe Epstein. And that's the most interesting thing about this whole thing to me, to be honest. This is actually the most interesting thing. The absurd performance of moral outrage. You do it all the time. And you act as if Epstein is unique. And again, it's just like what you do with Hitler. You know, the brand name of absolute evil is Hitler, even though he was absolutely par for the course as a Western leader. Hitler wasn't special, and neither was Epstein. They're par for the course. But you have to make these selective villains, these selective villains who are entirely actually in reality run-of-the-mill. But you have to make these selective villains tokens of evil that you can hate, precisely so that you can deny how run-of-the-mill they are. You have to prove how good you are by how much you revile them. You need to prove that these people are absolute anomalies, that they're abnormalities, that they're distinctly vile and distinctly repulsive, so that you can obscure how common and unremarkable their vileness and their repulsiveness in your society actually is. Even though, like I said, they're living the lifestyle and engaging in the behaviors that your mainstream popular culture upholds as living the dream. I mean, this is the official aspirational lifestyle goal of your whole society. But now you want us to believe that someone who is actually living that dream, that collective, Western, perverted, degenerate dream, is some sort of a freak anomaly, and you're horrified by it?